The cabin lights dimmed as passengers shuffled into first class, storing bags and settling into plush leather seats. A quiet hum filled the air until it snapped. "Excuse me, ma'am," the flight attendant's voice sliced through the calm, sharp and cold. She stood before a black woman in a tailored navy suit, her boarding pass still in hand. "This section is for first-class passengers only. You can't sit here." Heads turned. A couple of businessmen exchanged smirks. A teenager clutched her phone, recording just in case. The woman, calm and composed, handed over her ticket. First class, seat 3A. The attendant glanced, scoffed, and said louder, "I'll need to see some identification. People try this trick all the time." Gasps rippled down the aisle. The humiliation wasn't private, it was public theater. The investor's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed steady. "I belong here." The attendant smirked, blocking her way. "We'll see about that." Passengers shifted, uncomfortable but silent, and in that silence, the weight of every unspoken prejudice pressed down. But what no one on that flight realized was that this woman was about to turn humiliation into a storm that would cost the airline millions.
The airport itself had been chaos that day. Delays stretched across terminals, business travelers barked into phones. Families corralled restless kids, and first-class passengers clung to the illusion of order and privilege. First class wasn't just about legroom, it was about status, the quiet separation from everyone else. And in that carefully protected bubble, the rules weren't written on paper, they were enforced by tone, by looks, by assumptions. That was why this confrontation mattered. It wasn't simply about a seat. It was about dignity, in a space where dignity was currency. The moment the flight attendant raised her voice, she stripped more than comfort from the woman. She tried to strip her legitimacy. Around them, whispers grew. "She doesn't belong here. Why is she making a scene?" Others shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting anywhere but at the woman who stood accused for daring to sit where her ticket said she had earned. Every story has a moment when the balance tips, when arrogance crosses into outright humiliation. And here, in the crowded aisle of a luxury cabin, that moment had arrived. But this wasn't just a bad day at the airport. This was the moment before the storm.
The attendant wasn't new. She'd worked flights for nearly a decade. Known for keeping order in first class, she had a reputation passengers whispered about, but rarely challenged. She believed in hierarchies. She believed certain people fit luxury and others didn't. More than once, colleagues had overheard her grumble about those types sneaking into sections they hadn't paid for. Complaints were filed, quietly buried by supervisors who valued her efficiency over her attitude. She carried herself like a gatekeeper. Every boarding pass she scanned wasn't just paper, it was a test of who deserved privilege. And today, when a black woman in a tailored suit walked in with quiet confidence, the attendant's instinct wasn't service, it was suspicion. Entitlement hardened her tone, and prejudice fueled her performance. Because in her mind, humiliating someone wasn't wrong, it was her job. But arrogance always has a blind spot. What this employee didn't know was that their power move had just targeted the wrong person. The woman in seat 3A wasn't just another traveler. She was someone whose life had been built on tearing down barriers exactly like this one. And the fallout would soon engulf the airline itself.
Her name carried weight in boardrooms, though here, in this cabin, no one knew it yet. She had built her fortune brick by brick, deal by deal. The daughter of immigrants, she grew up watching her parents work 2 jobs just to put food on the table. From scholarships to late nights in law libraries, she carved her path through systems designed to keep her out. She faced investors who doubted her, partners who underestimated her, and clients who questioned her worth, until her results silenced every skeptic. Now she managed a portfolio that stretched across industries, banks, real estate, technology, and yes, aviation. Her tailored suit wasn't just fabric, it was armor, stitched from years of sacrifice and resilience. Every thread said, "I earned this. I belong here." And as she stood in that cabin, hearing whispers that echoed centuries of exclusion, something inside her steadied, because she knew humiliation was never the final chapter. It was always the setup. And the very strength that built her success was about to unravel the oppressor's entire world.
The attendant doubled down. "Ma'am, I'll need you to step aside while we sort this out." Her tone made it clear. She wasn't asking. The investor's seat sat empty just a few feet away, but the invisible wall had been raised. Passengers stared. A man in a suit chuckled under his breath. A woman muttered, "Just show her what she wants." The investor handed over her ID. The attendant scrutinized it like evidence in a trial. Strange. You don't look like a first-class passenger to me." The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Her cheeks warmed, but her posture never broke. She knew the sting wasn't just in the insult, it was in the spectacle. Minutes dragged. Passengers shifted, eager for the flight to take off. A child whispered too loudly, "Why won't they let her sit?" It was humiliation disguised as procedure, prejudice dressed as professionalism, and it burned. But just when it seemed she was powerless, she reached for her phone and made one call. She dialed without hesitation. A quiet voice answered. Her attorney, who also happened to be seated across the country in a boardroom that morning. Within minutes, messages flew, screens lit up. Across the aisle, a young man glanced at Twitter, wide-eyed. A trending hashtag began to form, "First-class humiliation." The attendant's confidence faltered when the passenger calmly said, "You'll want to check with your headquarters before you deny me my seat." Her voice wasn't raised, it didn't need to be. The authority radiated in her certainty. The plane grew silent, tension tightening like a bowstring. Passengers leaned in, sensing something shift. A supervisor hurried over. Whispers passed between them. Confusion twisted the attendant's face, then fear. Because in that moment, a message came back from corporate. This passenger isn't just a traveler, she's an investor, a major stakeholder with influence you cannot afford to offend. The attendant's cheeks flushed. The arrogance drained. She stammered, tried to backpedal. "Oh, there must have been a misunderstanding. Please, let me escort you to your seat." But it was too late. Cameras had already caught every word. Tweets were already viral. By the time the truth came out, it wasn't just an apology on the line, it was millions of dollars. The story didn't end when the wheels left the runway. By landing, it had already exploded across social media. Justice in first class trended worldwide. News outlets ran headlines, "Black investor humiliated by airline employee," and "Powerful reversal leaves airline scrambling." Executives faced the fallout. Stockholders demanded answers. Contracts the airline depended on suddenly teetered. And the attendant? Suspended pending investigation. Her once unchecked arrogance now splashed across headlines as a symbol of systemic bias. The airline's carefully polished image cracked wide open. Every ad about diversity and inclusion now looked like hollow words. But what mattered most wasn't the lawsuit or the headlines. It was the deeper lesson echoing through every passenger, every viewer, every person who had ever been told they didn't belong. Later, in a quiet interview, the investor didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Her words were calm. This wasn't just about me. It was about every person who's been told they don't belong. Dignity isn't a privilege, it's a right. Her family, her colleagues, her community, they stood taller, knowing her fight had echoed beyond that cabin. The humiliation intended to break her had instead built a movement. It reminded the world that silence enables arrogance, and courage dismantles it. This story wasn't just about money lost or lawsuits filed. It was about humanity. It was about choosing dignity over hate, resilience over prejudice. Because this wasn't just one woman's fight. It was a reminder to every single one of us.
So remember the title. Black investor humiliated on plane, her revenge cost the airline millions. It wasn't just a headline, it was a message. A warning to systems built on arrogance and a promise to those who keep fighting for their rightful place. If this story moved you, don't let it stop here. Share it, comment, add your voice to the millions who refuse to accept humiliation as normal. Every view, every share, every conversation sparked makes it harder for stories like this to be buried. Subscribe if you believe in dignity. Share if you believe in justice. And together, let's make sure no one, on a plane, in a boardroom, or anywhere else, ever has their humanity questioned again. Because dignity is not negotiable. Not today, not ever.